Hello, my friends. Today, I'm taking a break from movie recaps to bring you an intriguing documentary. If you enjoy this type of content, please show your support by liking and commenting. It really means a lot to me. The story of Chris Gardner, as depicted in the movie The Pursuit of Happyness, has served as a motivational catalyst for many people around the world to change their lives. In several American cities, after the movie's release, free screenings were organized for the homeless to encourage them to take greater responsibility for their lives.
Was it as easy as it looked?
No, sir. No, sir, it wasn't.
But how much of the movie is true to the real story? In this video, I will explain what Chris actually sold instead of bone density scanners and why he ended up deeply in debt, which had nothing to do with densitometers. I'll discuss how Chris's girlfriend totally lacked maternal instincts at some point.
Do you want to leave?
Yeah.
You want to leave?
Yes, I want to leave!
Get the hell out of here then, Linda.
How Chris had to spend nights wherever he could with his 1-year-old son who had just learned to walk, instead of the 5-year-old boy shown in the movie, and in what ways the real story was exaggerated, or on the contrary, toned down to avoid showing the harshest realities of Chris's life to the viewers.
Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me.
If you got a dream,
You gotta protect it. People can't do something themselves. They wanna tell you you can't do it.
and if you want something, go get it. Period.
All right?
All right.
In the movie, there's an implication between the lines that Chris came from a troubled background, and despite being a relatively talented boy, he just couldn't get into flow from a young age and ended up on the fringes of society.
I met my father for the first time when I was 28 years old.
However, there's also a fictional scene in the film where he invests all his savings into medical equipment, which led to his life's downward spiral.
I spent our entire life savings on these things.
The real story is closer to the first scenario. Chris and his 3 sisters were raised by their mother alone, and even more, she raised them intermittently. When Chris was 3 years old, his mother was imprisoned for welfare fraud, leaving Chris and his sisters in the care of their uncle and aunt. When his mother was released early for good behavior, she met a new man who became Chris's stepfather. Their relationship was rough, with his stepdad being a booze hound who'd knock Chris and his mom around and constantly tease Chris about his distinctive ears. Because of his stepdad's constant mocking and bullying at school, where they called him Dumbo, Chris developed a major complex about his ears. About 20% of Chris's autobiography is dedicated to describing how his stepfather used to beat him and his mother. Afterward, Chris would run to the nearest bar to call the police. The police would then hold his stepfather in the drunk tank overnight to sober up. After the release, the man usually behaved decently for a few days, but by the end of the week, he would find another excuse to get drunk, and the cycle would repeat. Eventually, it culminated when Chris's mother, who was on probation, tried to set the house on fire with the stepfather inside. The man, being drunk as usual, escaped with only a fright, but Chris's mother was sent back to prison, with attempted murder charges on top of the probation. In the movie, there's a scene where Chris, during an interview, proudly states he was the top student in his class. Yet, the class only had 12 students because it was a small town. The interviewer, an elderly man, seems unimpressed, likely perceiving it as a downside.
First in your class? In school? High school?
Yes, sir.
How many in the class?
12. It was a small town.
I'll say.
This moment might be unclear for some people, but viewers familiar with the early 80s social dynamics might catch this nuance, especially considering Chris's background as a black student from a poor neighborhood. Nevertheless, Chris recalled that he was very proud of being able to read whole paragraphs at 8 years old, unlike many kids in his class who could only read syllables at best, and some didn't even know the letters. Many adults in his neighborhood were illiterate, including his stepfather, the one who nearly got burned. During his mother's second prison term, Chris lived with his uncle, a former military man. Inspired by his uncle Henry's adventures, Chris decided to join the military when he grew up. During his army years, Chris served as a medic in a hospital, where he miraculously managed to impress a renowned cardiac surgeon, Dr. Robert Ellis. Ellis even promised to put in a good word for Chris at a lab in San Francisco. In reality, just like in the movie, Chris Gardner was exceptionally articulate and had a knack for making a great impression very quickly. We will revisit this when discussing the moment with the Ferrari and the interview in Dirty Clothes. Thanks to the recommendation from the cardiac surgeon, Chris landed a job as a lab assistant at a university with a salary of $8,000 a year. At the time, this wasn't a particularly high salary, especially for San Francisco. The movie emphasizes the massive social disparity And in reality, during that period, San Francisco indeed displayed the same stark contrasts as shown in the film. Chris recalled that almost all his money went towards rent and car maintenance. The thing is that the city is filled with steep hills, which constantly wore out car transmissions and brakes. The movie idealizes Chris's character significantly, and many facts that cast him in a less favorable light were altered. For example, the film suggests that Chris went broke because he invested all his money in bone density scanners.
I spent our entire life savings on these things. It was such a revolutionary machine. What I didn't know is that doctors and hospitals would consider them unnecessary luxuries.
Also, in reality, before his relationship with Jackie Medina, which is depicted in the film, Chris was married to another woman, Sherry Dyson. Unfortunately, Sherry had a miscarriage, and their relationship began to deteriorate. While still married to Sherry, Chris started to date Jackie, whose name was changed to Linda in the movie. A month later, Jackie became pregnant with the boy who is shown in the film. Sherry couldn't forgive Chris for his infidelity and began to make his life difficult by dragging out the divorce process, which ultimately took 5 years after the events of the movie and cost Chris a considerable amount of money.
I need my money. I need my money. I need my money right now.
Before the birth of his son, Chris had plans to pursue a medical education. Having worked in the field for some time, even as a lab technician, he had made many connections, and his first wife was a university teacher. But with the unexpected pregnancy of his new girlfriend, those plans had to be shelved. Becoming a doctor in America with residency requires 10 years, and he needed to raise his son here and now. So Chris switched from a lab technician to a seller of medical equipment. However, he didn't invest his own money in this equipment, being just a hired worker, and he sold a wide range of medical equipment, not just bone density scanners. At first, it seemed like Chris was making even more money, but his new job required constant travel throughout San Francisco in his car, visiting various medical facilities and pitching equipment. Parking was always a problem near these facilities, and Chris, running late for meetings, would park wherever he could, resulting in hefty fines.
You see that car? One with the pretty yellow shoe on it? That's mine. There's no parking near hospitals. That's what happens when you're always in a rush.
Moreover, as I mentioned earlier, due to San Francisco's specific landscape, car maintenance also cost him a pretty penny. And now, with expenses for the child and a divorce from his former wife, things only got tougher. So, as the movie shows, Chris's relationship with Jackie were far from great at that time. One fine day, just like in the movie, Chris saw a red Ferrari convertible with a self-assured, cool, young, smooth-shaven white man in an elegant tailor-made suit with expensive tie, cufflinks, and watch. Basically, the guy behind the wheel seemed to have everything going very well in life. Unlike the movie, this guy was circling the parking lot near the hospital looking for a spot, while Chris was just walking to his car, getting ready to leave. Somehow, Chris quickly made an impression on the man and arranged to meet for coffee to discuss his successful life strategies.
Hey, I'm gonna let you hang on to my car for the weekend, but I need it back for Monday. Feed the meter.
The man in the Ferrari was a stockbroker named Bob Bridges. Later, when they met, Bob introduced Chris to the world of finance. Eventually, Bob even helped kickstart Chris's career, though it turned out to be a false start. This part isn't in the movie, but it was that Bob with the Ferrari who arranged the first brokerage courses for Chris. However, after 2 months of training, there were layoffs at the firm, Bob was fired, and then they kicked out Chris, who hadn't even finished his training. This is where a bad streak in Chris Gardner's life began, a period he barely managed to escape from. While the film mixes up the sequence of events in this dark period, the overall message remains the same. Chris truly went through hell before a new dawn began in his life. During his broker training, from which he was eventually dismissed, he almost completely stopped selling medical equipment. He began to miss payments on previous parking fines, and the penalties started to pile up. After being dismissed from the internship, his relationship with Jackie completely fell apart. One evening, in a parking lot, they had a heated argument that turned physical, which was noticed by passing police officers. During the identity check, it was discovered that Chris had accumulated $1,200 in unpaid fines, leading to his arrest for 10 days, unlike the single day depicted in the film. Additionally, Jackie was offered to file a domestic violence report, which she did. After serving his 10 days, Chris returned to find his apartment completely empty, since Jackie had fled to New York with their child. He had no money, no way to pay for the apartment. Jackie had filed an assault complaint and taken their child to the opposite coast of the U.S. Plus, the divorce process with his previous wife showed no signs of ending. Most people in this situation would likely fall into a deep depression. But Chris, using a connection from his previous internship, managed to secure a new interview. He arrived at the interview not in paint-splattered clothes, as depicted in the film, since he hadn't been painting any walls, but still looking quite disheveled because Jackie had left the apartment bare, taking away even his underwear.
Chris, what would you say if a guy walked in for an interview without a shirt on? And I hired him. What would you say?
He must have had on some really nice pants.
There was no joke about pants in real life, but Chris somehow managed to make a strong impression despite wearing old, wrinkled clothes. He candidly explained his recent hardships, including unpaid parking fines, arrest, and financial struggles, but kept silent about the fact that he would soon be homeless. After this, he was accepted into another internship. Unlike in the film, during this internship, he didn't run around with a bone density scanner. He just worked odd jobs on weekends. Most importantly, this internship was paid. The money was only enough for food, but since he was living alone by then, he slept in shelters, at odd jobs, or rented a bed in a flophouse for a day. So, he managed to get by, driven by the hope that in 6 months, he would become a broker. Unlike in the film, where only 1 person out of 20 would be hired, it was quite possible for anyone who completed the 6-month training, passed the exam, and attracted enough clients. Things seemed to be improving, but 2 months into the internship, circumstances changed again. Jackie returned to San Francisco and said she couldn't support their child anymore. So, she dropped the domestic violence charges, but left the child with Chris.
I know you'll take care of him, Chris. I know that.
This marked the beginning of the most challenging period in Chris's life. In reality, as opposed to the film, the child was born on January 28, 1981, so Chris was given a 14-month-old boy.
There were some major differences between reality and the film. Now, in the film, they have to do things a certain way. Jaden Smith plays my son as a 5-year-old. My son was 14 months old.
Okay.
That changes everything. He was still in diapers.
By that time, Chris had managed to arrange partial deferment for his bed payment at a flophouse. But with a small child, he wasn't allowed into any paid shelter under any circumstances. So, just like in the movie, they slept wherever they could, in parks, airports, public transportation, homeless shelters, and even a locked restroom. Eventually, Chris arranged for a reverend at a women's shelter to look after his 1-year-old son while he was at the office. Chris, as shown in the film, hid from his colleagues the fact that he had a child to support and that they were homeless.
What's up?
Work trip.
Where you going?
Sacramento. I'm trying to move a couple guys that at Pac Bell, and I'm trying to bring them over, get them over to us, so they got me going out there golfing.
Awesome. Hey, let him win around.
As opposed to the film, where Chris often left the office early to deal with housing issues, in reality, he arrived at the office early in the morning and stayed late every day. He worked quite diligently, making around 200 calls a day. His persistence paid off, and in 1982, Gardner passed the broker exam on his first attempt and became a full-fledged employee of the firm.
I thought I'd wear a shirt today, being the last day and all.
Well, thank you. But wear one tomorrow, though, okay? Because tomorrow's going to be your first day. If you'd like to work here as a broker. Would you like that, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Gardner gradually started getting back on his feet. He rented an apartment, enrolled his son in daycare, and repaired his relationship with Jackie. 3 years later, in 1985, they had a daughter. 2 years after, in 1987, Chris founded his brokerage firm. Once he started making significant money, he began donating large sums to various organizations that help the homeless and support people in third world countries. In 2002, Gardner gave a major interview detailing his biography for the first time. His life story was so compelling that he began giving motivational seminars worldwide. He also started writing his autobiography, The Pursuit of Happyness, and simultaneously, a screenplay for the movie was being developed. It's said that during the filming of The Pursuit of Happyness, many decisions were made with Chris's input. He loved the idea of replacing the 1-year-old child in the film with Will Smith's real son. First, their relationship would appear more genuine on screen because the young boy wouldn't need to act like a son. Second, an older child could interact more actively with his on-screen father, providing more depth to the script.
I don't understand.
You don't understand what?
Are we going to the game?
I said possibly we're going to the game. Do you know what possibly means?
I know what it means.
What does it mean?
It means that we're not going to the game.
How did you get so smart?
You're smart.
And third, even the scenes where Smith sleeps in restrooms with a 5-year-old send chills down the spine. so similar scenes with a 1-year-old child might have been too much for the audience. Today, Chris continues to give motivational seminars and remains active in philanthropy. His net worth is estimated to be over $60 million. If you want to refresh your memory of the movie, or if you've never seen it before, check out my recap of The Pursuit of Happyness by clicking on the picture. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please support me with your likes and comments. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any new videos.